Welcome back. You're listening to the discussion Innovation in Government, sponsored by Carasoft on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest today is Dennis Riley, the Vice President of Public Sector at Gigamon. Dennis, before break, we started to talk a little bit about the cloud and the impact the cloud has had on digital transformation. You brought up a really great success story as the census, the 2020 count, as being just a perfect example of why an agency can really take advantage of all those parts and pieces of the cloud that make sense. There's another piece that comes up time and again when I talk to vendors like Gigamon and others. They always want to talk about multi-cloud and why agencies have to understand how the multi-cloud approach matters, whether it's what workloads go into which type of cloud or how to manage it with the security side. Give me a sense of what you're seeing and how Gigamon can kind of play in that multi-cloud world.
Sure. Yeah, we are seeing more and more agencies, wanting visibility into a multi-cloud environment. And of course, the government always likes to have competition, so they don't want to be beholden to just one cloud service provider because they want to be good, stewards of the taxpayers' money and get the most mileage out of every IT dollar they spend. An agency that's a longtime Gigamon customer, the Social Security Administration, just did an upgrade to their visibility infrastructure. And they use CDM dollars. So they use the Department of Homeland Security Continuous Diagnostic and Mitigation Program to secure some additional funding to accelerate their infrastructure upgrade of Gigamon for visibility. And they included in that three relatively new modules and solutions that Gigamon offers. One, the visibility into their virtual environment because they use a lot of VMware. And also to get visibility into both Microsoft Azure and AWS cloud. So they are clearly looking at a multi-cloud environment and want to make sure no matter where they put their workloads, they can monitor those workloads for both performance and security.
You bring up one of my favorite topics, CDM. I had a recent conversation with the Homeland Security Department, both Sean Connolly, who deals with the Trusted Internet Connection side, but also Brian Ware, who's his boss, who's the Assistant Director for Cybersecurity. And one of the things that Brian brought up, and maybe we could talk a little bit about this, is during COVID, the attack surface has grown so much that agencies are so much more worried about different attack and threats that are hitting their devices, whether it's laptops or through VPNs or the like. Are you seeing a call from agencies, from customers asking you all for help to understand where their attacks are and know what they can't know or haven't known before?
Yes. So, well publicized by Department of Justice, the FBI, and I'm sure some of their findings are being informed by the intelligence community that adversaries are taking advantage of COVID-19 with the quick move to work from home. A lot of unmanaged devices now connecting to the network, and people just being under stress. Human error is going to happen, and that means there's going to be more vulnerabilities. In particular, the pharmaceutical industry and the healthcare industry have been targets, and I think that probably fits with the federal government as well. If you think like agencies like HHS have talked about denial of services. I have to believe NIH has been a target with all the research that they're doing on therapeutics and vaccines, as well as private sector pharmaceutical companies. So we have seen a pickup in activity from customers like that, asking us to help them make sure that they have secure networks, under this stressful situation.
Is there something that, from an agency perspective, again, I'll go back to my conversation with Brian Ware at DHS. One of the things he says, a lot of times agencies are not doing the cyber hygiene. We love to talk about cyber hygiene from the sense of, well, you knew that was a problem. You could have fixed it a year ago, 5 years ago, but you haven't. Let's fix that. Let's get some of the easy stuff. Is that something that's starting to happen? Again, because of cloud, because of this broader attack service, agencies are finally getting to, because there's an urgency, getting to this those long-standing vulnerabilities?
I think so. I think everyone's doubling down on their efforts. And the premise about visibility is that if you can't see what's happening on your network, you can't defend it. So having visibility for on-premise, the virtual environment, and the cloud becomes really important. Because if you don't know what's going on, if you don't know that perhaps an adversary is staging data in preparation for exfiltration, you can't stop it. And often you'll read about it in the press or see it on the dark web. So yeah, agencies are being more diligent, but they need all the help they can get, from obviously cybersecurity professionals as well as technology, because we've never been more dependent as a society and as a government on digital systems. So that means we're more vulnerable to attack, and the impact of a successful attack would be that much greater. So there's always more to do. And you mentioned Brian Ware, and he and others at DHS in May of this year, held a industry day to lay out their vision for the cybersecurity division. And he too is a big fan of rapidly moving workloads to the cloud. So having that visibility in the cloud becomes very important.
It's a painful reminder of that industry day. Media was not invited. So thank you for painfully reminding me that I was excluded once again from something that sounded excellent. You bring up this idea of the changing of targets, the broader, the more challenges ahead. And a lot of agencies are starting to talk about zero trust and the move to a zero trust architecture. Walk me through why zero trust matters and how can agencies get toward that final, well, never final, we know that, but the next great thing that will help with security.
Sure, and zero trust is a journey, as you allude to, and every agency starts from a little bit of a different place. Some of them have already implemented aspects of it, but the premise is that it used to be that outside the firewall was considered untrusted, inside the firewall was considered trusted. Well, that hard shell perimeter really has gone away. Now you treat with suspicion any user and any device and make them authenticate themselves frequently. And as we know, some of the biggest incidents, the greatest damage has been done by insider threat, not people who would be outside an agency. So there's a couple of things with zero trust. Again, you have to have excellent visibility, whether it's on premise or in the cloud, because if you can't see it, you can't secure it and defend it. So visibility of data in motion is an important tenet of a zero trust environment. You're really, without visibility, you can't have a zero trust architecture. The other thing that's important with zero trust is being able to see into encrypted traffic, where agencies are already at 70 or 80% of their traffic being encrypted. They're being encouraged with zero trust to go to 90 to 100%. Well, it's a double-edged sword, because while encryption can protect our data, it can also allow adversaries to hide inside encrypted environments. So if you have encrypted email coming in, that might be a vector for a spear phishing attack. If the adversary gets inside the network and starts to do command and control activities through an encrypted channel, or start to stage data through an encrypted channel, or exfiltrate data through an encrypted channel, and you can't break into that and inspect it, you don't know what's going on, and you can't stop the attack at whatever stage it is. So you need to be able to do that break and inspect. A next generation network packet broker is a great way to do that, where you can break and decrypt the data stream once, feed it to all your cybersecurity tools so they can do their job, and then re-encrypt it again. So you decrypt once, use it many times, as opposed to having each individual tool do it. And the reason you don't want to have each individual cybersecurity tool do it is they often take a 50 to 80% performance hit if they have to do their own decryption. So if you have 10, 20, even 30 cybersecurity tools in your stack, and you can decrypt once and use that information many times, it's a huge force multiplier. We had a federal systems integrator do just that with Gigamon. They wanted to inspect their encrypted traffic before it went through their intrusion prevention system and their web application firewall. They used Gigamon to do it, and they reported that rather than having each individual tool do it and have to upgrade their tool infrastructure, they saved $1 million by using Gigamon's inline SSL decryption to decrypt once and use many times.
You just probably got a lot of people excited when you talk about that kind of savings, because a large systems integrator, they're probably not even nearly the size of a even medium to large size agency. So if they are able to kind of save money, there's probably a lot of money on the table for agencies to really stop trying to do these one-offs and kind of they'll rationalize their tool sets, but also add this, what sounds like a layer on top of the tool sets so they all work together, an integration layer. Is that what you guys are really calling for?
Right. We call it a visibility or a layer or a monitoring layer. And it's definitely needs to be a part of zero trust. And because it's such a force multiplier, it pays for itself very rapidly. We've had an independent study show that Gigamon usually pays for itself in 7 months, sometimes less. So it's not only a great security and network performance decision, it's also a great financial decision as stewards of the taxpayers' money for an agency to make.
Agencies love to talk about zero trust. Vendors, with all due respect, love to talk about zero trust. Are you finding that there are steps that agencies are taking that are getting them toward that zero trust architecture environment? I know CDM, Einstein, TIC are all pieces to the puzzle, but how many agencies are getting more of those pieces in place to have this complete puzzle?
Well, I have to acknowledge that earlier this year, there was a lot more talk about zero trust before COVID-19 hitting. But I do expect that zero trust is going to be coming back to the forefront because it's certainly the way forward. And we see civilian agencies, through the CIO Council, as well as DoD and the intelligence community, all embracing zero trust. And there are pilots going on right now to define best practices. NIST is working on, a zero trust architecture. They have a special publication out on that. Industry comments have gone in, so we're waiting for the next revision of that draft to come out. So agencies are definitely getting started on it. They're definitely making plans. They all start at a little different place, but having visibility to what's happening on your network is absolutely key to zero trust.
Dennis, we're just about out of time. Before I let you go, what's the future looking like? There are some things that haven't come up, like AI, machine learning, robotics process automation, data analytics, all the kind of some of those other buzzwords that haven't come up during our conversation. From your customers, what are they asking for? What are some of the things that they're asking you for help with in a year from now, 5 years from now?
Yeah, one of the things we're starting to hear a lot more about is network detection and response. Most agencies have implemented endpoint detection and response, but they're starting to recognize that the network is really sort of the single source of truth. Because anything that happens in an agency is going to happen on the network. Even if someone fills out a paper form, puts it in the mail and sends it into an agency, that's going to get keyed into a digital system. So any intrusion, any exfiltration happens on the network. So and security operations centers are typically overworked and understaffed. So if you can have a good network detection and response system that helps security operations centers prioritize the most serious and potentially most damaging alerts to investigate first, that's a tremendous force multiplier for them. They can also get over the well-known alert fatigue, and that's been a big help to threat analysts and threat hunters. And Brian Ware at CISA is talking about hunting and finding things on the network before the adversary gets a chance to do damage. So network detection and response seems to be an area that more and more agencies are interested in. And Gigamon does provide a solution to that through our Threat Insight offering.
All right, I know that's a big issue that the Homeland Security Department is trying to focus on, the security operations as a service. I think that's part of what you're talking about here is the network detection. This is something to talk about next time because unfortunately we are out of time for today. So let me thank my guest. Dennis Riley is the Vice President of Public Sector at Gigamon. Dennis, thank you so much for taking the time today.
My pleasure, Jason. Thank you.
I'm Jason Miller, and you've been listening to the discussion Innovation in Government, sponsored by Carahsoft on Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search innovation.